think it would be like a net positive for our country to deport everyone who's illegal?
Yeah.
Nearly 180,000 illegal immigrants with criminal records ordered deported from our country are tonight roaming free to threaten peaceful citizens. They are being released by the tens of thousands into our communities.
For illegal immigration, the amount of money it takes to come after that person versus the amount of quote-unquote damage they're causing is just not worth it. I'm saying for the people who have already came into the country, we shouldn't deport the people who priorly illegally enter.
So an amnesty for the ones who are already here.
Yeah.
You don't think that that would send a signal if over the course of 40 to 50 years, everybody who had entered the country illegally were allowed to stay and given asylum? You don't think that that would send a signal to people considering illegally immigrating to the United States that their odds of staying in the United States after illegally immigrating are better than they were before?
No, I do not. Do you really think it would be like a net positive for our country to deport everyone who's illegal?
Yeah.
Like net positive, including like the, how much it would take, the effort, money, funding it would take to actually, go after people and actually deport them?
Let me ask you a question. If it was very expensive to prosecute murderers, do you think that means we shouldn't prosecute murderers just because it's expensive to prosecute them?
I think we should prosecute all murderers, but I do not think that
Even regardless of how much money it costs, right?
Sure.
Okay, great. So I think that border laws are absolutely necessary to the safety and security of any nation.
Okay.
If you do not enforce your laws, they do not exist, which is why you have to enforce murder laws regardless of how expensive they are. This is not an argument about economics. It's an argument about the foundation of a country. You can't have a country without borders.
So let me tell you, I'm not against having a border necessarily. What I'm specifically against is the idea that we should deport everyone who came in illegally.
What would you prefer to do?
I think that would just be a net negative for the country, regardless of if you think it's okay or regardless of how bad you think it is to enter the country illegally.
What do you think should happen to them if they're not deported?
I'm going to be straight up with you, man. I think we should just leave them alone. I think, because, technically...
So what does that do? What does that do for the law? You think we should have border laws, but you think the people who violate those laws should just be left alone?
Yeah, I can go into that.
So I just want to get this straight. You agree with having... One second. I just want to get this thought out. You agree with having border laws, but you think the people who violate those border laws should just be left alone.
Yeah, so I do. I'm not against necessarily border laws, but I think it's kind of wrong as a country to... after just the past 4 years, Joe Biden was letting everyone pretty much in, right? Which you can, we can debate that too. But I think as a country, we kind of let these people in, and we were kind of not against them coming in, even if it is illegal. So I think now the switch up it's a little bit messed up in my opinion.
I agree that it's messed up, and I agree that it shouldn't have happened in the first place, but that doesn't change the fact that the people who entered the country illegally were fully aware that borders exist and were fully aware that what they were doing was illegal. They knew that one simple change in presidency could result in them all being deported. This wasn't an enigma to them. They're not stupid. Debatable, but they're not unaware of the law. They understand how countries work, they understand how borders work, and they chose to take the risk anyway. This is risk that they thrust upon themselves, not risk that Trump put on them. This law has existed since the World War II era. Okay, it's not new.
So I can get into that. Can you repeat your last sentence? I'm so sorry. I just completely lost my train of thought.
Yeah, these people aren't unaware of the law. They know that it's illegal to enter the country. They know how laws, countries, and borders work. Yeah. It's not an enigma to them.
I just think no matter, so we can also continue on to that, but I think it would just be a net negative for our country to try to go after and deport everyone. Number one, we won't be able to do that in 4 years, okay? So as a country, it's just literally impossible to deport, over 10 million people in at this point, 3 years. That's just not going to happen. And it's not, assuming a Democrat wins next election, they're not going to continue this, right? So it's already kind of useless to try, I feel like. So it's kind of already just throwing money in a fire. But also, I think even if immigrants are illegal, I think they're still good for the country. I don't think I think it would be worse, more of a net negative for us to try to kick them out and realistically fail than to not.
Yeah, I don't understand how that's the case. First of all, What's interesting is you're highlighting a problem with something, and the problem you're identifying itself is a problem, but not towards the argument that you're making. So you're saying that because we can't deport everybody in the next 3 years, which you don't even know to be a fact, that it would be useless to try, because if a Democrat gets elected, they'll just reverse the policy and not deport everyone. Meaning the Democrat will violate the law. So what you're saying is that because a Democrat will just come and violate the law anyway, it's not even worth trying to enforce the law in the first place, which doesn't make any sense, because the problem is not the attempt to enforce the law in the first place. The problem, the illegal act, is the Democrat coming in and not enforcing the law.
So you think, so then why wouldn't you just be for specifically going after, like, for example, Joe Biden, who let all of them in, versus the immigrants themselves?
I am for prosecuting people that violate the law. I'm for prosecuting people who illegally employ illegal immigrants. But they also have to not be here. And that seems to be the point of contention for the most people, is that illegal immigrants should be deported.
So what do you think should happen to Joe Biden? Like, if you were in total power, what would you have happened to him?
I'm not familiar enough with the laws regarding what a president has, the obligation a president holds to enforce the law, to know what he could be charged with or anything like that. My position is that illegal immigrants should be deported. That's the argument we're going to have, and I'd like to hear your position against it. So far, what you've given me is there's no point in trying to enforce the law because Democrats don't care about the law.
So my main point with that is that I just think it would be a net negative for the country. I think realistically...
Why?
Yeah, so I'm getting to that. I don't think we could ever, no matter even the situation, it would just be completely... almost impossible to deport everyone who try to come in illegally, especially like during even just Joe Biden. But alongside that, I think the amount of money it takes to deport one person, right? I don't know the specific number, but it's got to be in the hundreds at least, right? Which I feel like that times, like, I don't know the exact number either, but like at least 15 million people, like spending that much money to deport these people, I feel like would be worse for our country than even, by your view, the potential damages by keeping them in.
So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you agree that it's impossible to prosecute and convict everyone who's ever committed murder?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think, despite the fact that it's impossible to prosecute and convict every person who's ever committed murder, that we should still try?
Sure.
Okay, so your logic goes out the window. Your logical rule is that because it's impossible to deport everyone who's illegally coming to the country, that we shouldn't try to deport them all. I think that regardless of the fact, the absolute fact, that we can never put every person in jail who's committed murder, we should still try and strive towards that. Your other argument is that it's expensive to deport every illegal immigrant. If somebody has committed murder, I don't think the amount of money that it will cost to put them in jail is an object. I think they've violated the law, and thus they must be prosecuted regardless of how much money that costs. I think the same rule is present for border laws.
Can I chip in there?
Yeah.
Where I differentiate between murder and entering the country illegally is I don't think entering the country illegally is nearly as bad as murdering someone. I would argue murdering someone is the worst crime any person could commit in a society. So I don't think it's exactly equal there.
I'm not claiming it's equal.
I don't believe we should put equal effort towards prosecuting both of those crimes.
I'm not saying that they're equal. What I'm saying is that you have a logical rule. That logical rule is that because it's impossible for us to deport all illegal immigrants, that we should not try or strive towards that. That logical rule is broken for you in another subset of the law, murder, right? And I would assume that you would hold this position as well for theft. Do you think that despite the fact that we can't hold every thief accountable for their actions, that we should still try?
So with that, right?
No, answer the question. Answer the question. Do you think that we should hold thieves accountable regardless of how expensive it may be or regardless of the fact that we might not catch them?
So with that, I think to a certain extent, no. I don't think we should go after every thief with the full extent of the government's power. I
Really?
think up to a certain point, if you steal a certain amount, yes, right? But I feel like under a certain amount, like for example, under felonious theft or whatever the term is, under like $950, I don't think it's worth it for us to spend, a big portion of the government's money.
So you think that it should be totally okay. Let's say you're a poor person, and you make only $15,000 a year, and that's with the help of your $900 computer. Somebody comes into your house and steals your $900 computer. You don't know who it was, and now you can't make money because you no longer have that $900 computer. It's under $950. It's not felonious theft, but you now are robbed of your ability to make money. The only people who can help are the police. You think the police shouldn't help you?
I think so. I see what you're doing there, but I think up to a certain
not. No,
point,
I just want you to answer the question, yes or no.
You're kind of catching me here, but honestly, we probably shouldn't go after it.
Exactly. And the reason for that is because the purpose of enforcing laws is not economic benefit. The purpose of enforcing laws is to maintain order, provide service to the citizens of a country, and to prevent chaos from havocing the streets. That's the purpose of law enforcement. It's not to make money. You're obviously going to lose money enforcing the law. That's why you raise money, is so that the law can be enforced.
Yeah, so I think you're kind of misrepresenting my point there. I'm not claiming that we should just, not care about the law because it doesn't make us money. I just think specifically for illegal immigration, I think the amount of money it takes to come after that person versus the amount of quote-unquote damage they're causing is just not worth it.
Okay, how about this? Minor sexual assault. Somebody grabs somebody's butt or touches them in their private parts. Do you think that person, that you should try to prosecute those people, all of them, and you should try as hard as you can with the full force of the law?
Yes.
Okay, great. So you think for virtually every category of crime, you think that the government should attempt to prosecute people, even though you know it's an impossibility that you will catch all of those people. It seems that, in fact, the rule you've set, the logical rule of you can't catch all of them, so you shouldn't even try, is not actually broken by murder. It seems the logical rule that you should always try to catch everybody, regardless of whether you're going to, is actually broken by the inverse. It's actually that the idea that you should not try because you won't catch them is the rule breaker for the rule that you actually hold, which is regardless of whether you'll catch them or not, you should always try, which is what you hold for the overwhelming majority of all crimes.
So I think we have a fundamental difference in morality here. I view sexual assault of any kind and murder both significantly worse than illegal immigration, but I also think you're kind of misrepresenting my point there.
But this isn't about morality, though. Laws are not just about morality.
Well, I think any sort of law enforcement is kind of about morality.
Okay, what really, you think so?
Sure. I mean, yeah.
Okay, do you think that not filing your taxes is a moral issue? Do you think speeding tickets are a moral issue?
I would argue yes. I think because the thing is, if that was not enforced, I feel like I'm kind of playing into your point here. But if you, for example, with taxes, if nobody paid their taxes, that would kind of ruin society, right?
Do you think you kind
of have to enforce that?
Do you think that speeding or parking tickets are a subject of morality?
To a certain extent, yes. I think speeding can endanger the lives of not only yourself but others, and also parking tickets can.
How about public intoxication?
Yeah. So once again, with that, the reason that's a law in the first place is public intoxication. You can pose a danger to yourself or others when you do that. So I do think that is kind of.
Yeah, you can, but that doesn't mean you have. So these laws aren't pieces of morality. It's not innately immoral to be in public intoxicated. It's not innately immoral to park in a place that you're not supposed to be parking in. These are laws of pragmaticism. It's not pragmatic to allow people to park wherever they want. It's not pragmatic to allow people to just patrol the streets blackout drunk. It's not pragmatic to allow people to go 100 miles down the street, right? That's why we have those laws. It's to maintain order. It's a matter of pragmaticism, not morality. It has nothing to do with morality. And just like those laws, immigration laws are also a matter of pragmaticism.
Okay, yeah, so if we look into it like that, I think that kind of feeds into what I'm saying is I am for closing the border, right? Because I do think if we left it open for all of time, I think eventually that would cause some pretty bad issues. But I think so far, it's not worth it to try to kick people out. And so, let me finish here. I don't think it's. Oh my God, hold on.
You're good.
I'm embarrassing myself. What you were saying is like it's a moral issue.
No, it's not. It's not a moral issue.
That's not what you were saying. No. Fuck, dude. I'm completely straight up with you. I was gonna say something, but I completely.
It's all good. Let me ask you a follow-up question. You said that you're for closing the border, leaving it open would cause major issues long term. So you're aware of major issues that would be caused long term by leaving the border open. Why would you advocate to let it be open then? And second of all, if you're for, so 1 second, you're for closing the border then. If you're for closing the border, why would you be also in favor of not enforcing the laws that actually close the border? Because if you say it's illegal to cross the border, but if you cross the border illegally, we're not going to do anything to you, we're just going to allow you to be left alone or whatever, that signals to those people, well, it's illegal for me to do that, but it's not really illegal because nothing is going to be done to me as a result of doing that thing.
I think you're misrepresenting my point there. I don't believe that we should let all illegal immigration continue. And, I don't think it's like a safe zone where once you're in the country, you should be left in. I'm saying for the people who have already, came into the country, I think especially because of the way our country viewed immigration in that manner in the past, where it was much more acceptable and, they weren't being actively deported for it. I think we shouldn't deport the people who priorly illegally entered. But I think now...
So amnesty for the ones who are already here.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what this signals to the people that are considering illegally crossing the border. They're saying, oh, it's illegal, Trump's in charge, he's going to deport me. Oh, just in, Trump has now given amnesty to the people who were already in the United States. So if I cross the border now and they find me at the border, they're going to send me back like a fish. But if I manage to evade law enforcement for just long enough, there's a pretty good chance that in the future, they might give amnesty again. At this point now, if Trump were to give amnesty to the people who are already here, this would be the second time in American history where illegal immigrants were given amnesty. So what this would signal to them is that there's an interval of time where after a certain amount of time has passed, illegal immigrants will be given amnesty. I can come to the United States, have a bunch of kids, those act as anchors, and those kids will be American citizens and allowed to stay forever. And if I can just make it for long enough, I too will be able to stay in the United States and be given amnesty. That is an incentive to violate the law. That's what you've created.
I think that's like completely, that's just like an assumption that's
it's
not really based off
it's not
any
an
fact.
assumption. It's how human cognition works. If I
You're
am
assuming how it would work though. Like you're talking about
I'm
in the
not
future,
I'm not
way
assuming.
In the future,
I'm not
immigration
assuming.
work.
This is exactly how human cognition works. If I'm
Dude,
told
you don't know that for a fact.
if I'm told that I will go to work and every month magically $1,000 will appear in my bank account, I'm going to continue going to work because I've now been given a monetary incentive to do so, right? If you tell people that they're going to be given amnesty after illegally entering the country, people
that's
are
not what I'm saying though.
That is what you said. You agreed that people should be given amnesty.
For all, for the sake of this, we can say, if I was in power, I would say for all future reference, no one else would be given amnesty. But at this point, I think it's okay to close the border, but give everyone who already came in amnesty.
Okay, so if I say this is exactly what happened the last time it happened, right? Okay, you're given amnesty now, but we're going to continue enforcing border laws and it won't happen again. Okay, now Trump does it and he says the same thing. Okay, the illegal immigrants are thinking, or the people considering illegally immigrating are thinking, okay, this happened one time before where they said they're going to continue enforcing border laws. The people who are already here will be given amnesty. Now Trump's doing it again. He's saying the same thing. Chances are in another 30 years, the same thing will happen. Let's illegally immigrate. And it doesn't even have to be true. It doesn't
There's
even have
nothing to really back up that assumption. You're assuming way in 30 years. What you're saying is way in 30 years, there's a chance that, more illegal immigrants or more people outside the country are going to be like, hey, it's been 30 years. Maybe I have a chance of, having amnesty once I come in, even though currently in 30 years, they're saying currently there is not amnesty, but maybe there will be because it's been 30 years and, that's what happened.
This is exactly what Reagan did. Like, this, right? Reagan gave mass amnesty to 3 million people, 3 million illegal immigrants. And then we went right back to enforcing border laws. Okay. All right, guys. These guys have amnesty. We're going to not give amnesty again. We're going to keep enforcing the border laws. These 3 million are safe. Okay. So what you're saying is that happened, and then 30 years later, you're saying it should happen again, and we're going to say the same thing, which just teaches them that we're the boy who cried wolf, and that our laws are not actually going to be enforced. You're advocating. It's not a fallacy. It's not a fallacy. It's undeniable that what it teaches people when you allow them to break the law and then let them off the hook is that they can do it again, or that others in the future can do it. That's what you're teaching them. You're teaching them weakness. That's undeniable.
Yeah, so I feel like this is kind of a sunk cost fallacy where just because it would have happened twice doesn't mean it's going to happen a third time. That's not a sunk cost fallacy. That's not what a sunk cost fallacy is. I named the wrong fallacy. I'm sorry. But that's just because it would happen twice in this theoretical doesn't mean it would happen for a third time. Also,
no, but it gives people the hope. It gives people the hope and preconceived notion that it'll happen again. Okay, but just because you're now showing a pattern. You're now showing a pattern, and people will act on that pattern. You're providing them with an incentive.
Man, I feel like you're really kind of going on a stretch here where you're saying in 30 years, immigrants are going to be like, hey...
No, I'm not saying in 30 years. I'm saying right now they'll say, okay, all I have to do is get into the country and wait 30 years. Wait for the next wave of amnesty. It's already happened twice. It's bound to happen a third time.
There would be no evidence to support that idea, though. So any theoretical immigrant who would believe that, there would be no basis for what they're believing.
It doesn't matter. There doesn't have to be basis. And there actually would be basis. There actually would be basis, because at this point, with the policy that you're proposing, it would have already happened twice. A pattern would have been established. And therefore, there would be a basis for what they're believing. Doesn't mean it's going to happen a third time. I feel like this is kind of like a childish way. It's an established pattern. It doesn't have to happen again. 2 times is not an establishment. It doesn't have to happen again. But at this point, there is a pattern, and them believing it will happen again is all that is required for an incentive to be given.
You're really going out on a stretch here. Listen,
if my father comes home from work and he brings me a Twinkie, and then the next day he comes home from work and he brings me a Twinkie again, on the third day I'm probably going to be waiting at the door for my Twinkie.
Okay, you can be waiting for your Twinkie, but if you just don't get it the third day, if your dad does not give you a Twinkie, then maybe you're going to stop assuming you're going to get a Twinkie. Dude, something can happen.
Right, but that doesn't change the initial fact. Hold up. In the analogy, giving the Twinkie the first day is the time when Reagan gave amnesty. Getting the Twinkie on the second day is when you're proposing that Trump should do it. So now I've gotten the Twinkie on the second day. We've gotten our second wave of amnesty. Now, when I know my dad's going to be coming home from work, I'm waiting at the door for him so I can get my Twinkie. Waiting at the door is analogous to crossing the border. They've crossed the border. Now they're waiting for that next wave. It doesn't matter whether that next wave comes or it doesn't. It doesn't matter whether the Twinkie comes or doesn't. What matters is simply the fact that they've now geared their actions in a way that are waiting for that thing to happen. The illegal immigrants violate the law by illegally entering the country and waiting a duration of time. It doesn't matter if the mass amnesty actually comes. The fact of the matter is that giving amnesty incentivizes them even more to come to the United States illegally because they believe one day they might be let off the hook. And that is undeniable, by the way.
Dude, sorry, you cannot call this undeniable. This is
It is undeniable.
What is undeniable about this, man? Okay. Even assuming your logic is sound here, you're making a theory about what will happen with immigration in the United States in 30 years. With this complex, immigration is very complex, and you're making this very simple.
So let me just ask you a question that may or may not, depending on how you answer, make you look like an idiot. Okay. So, amnesty has been given once to people who have violated the law and come to the United States illegally.
Okay.
Now it's happened a second time. Everybody who, from the point it was first given to now, are also given amnesty. So over the course of 40, 50 years, everyone who's illegally entered the country and managed to stay has been given amnesty. Millions of people. Do you think that would send a signal to people in other countries who are tentatively thinking about illegally immigrating that their odds of being able to stay in the United States are good? Or better than they were before?
No, I
really. You don't think that would send a signal if over the course of 40 to 50 years, everybody who had entered the country illegally were allowed to stay and given asylum. You don't think that that would send a signal to people considering illegally immigrating to the United States that their odds of staying in the United States after illegally immigrating are better than they were before?
No, I do not.
I think that is completely absurd. No, you may not.